Is the end approaching? And I don't want it. It's been a long time. It's been a really long time since a game has grabbed me so hard that the prospect that it's about to be over is upsetting. I just want more. I don't know if it is. That's the whole point of a blind playthrough, is I don't know when this ends. And I know there's a DLC, but I also don't know whether the audience is going to be like, yeah, the DLC is bad. Like, sometimes games release DLC, they're not very good. But the insinuation in-game is that we're kind of approaching an end point, and there's a bunch of stuff that's opened up in, like, the bounties and things, which is tons of content to just mess around with, like, post-game, maybe. So I don't know. But, the story is now taking us to a point where we figured out that the Rotten Vale is where the Elder Dragons go to die, but it's kind of going scuffed, and if this Zora, I'm almost got the name right, Zora, we'll call him Zora, dies in the wrong place, it's actually going to blow everything up, and we need to put a stop to that, and that's where we're up to, and now the final mission, they're all sort of like routed up. Now, this could go horribly wrong, and the game will continue. I have seen things that indicate that we can go further, but I don't know if they're DLC bound, right? So, like, the armor tiers can go up to, like, level 5, the pendants and things can go up, but ultimately, I don't want this to be over right now. I don't want that to happen. But let's catch you up on where we were, because I had a revelation. A revelation. This game has a lot of jank. It does. It has a lot of jank that, if it wasn't for the charm, and I'm going to be a bit more specific on this, if it wasn't for the charm of the game, you would actually just be like, this game is kind of trash in places. But it gets away with it in a really nice way. And the way it does that, and I'll explain this scenario to you, is that I had a really funny moment yesterday where the main story was about killing a Rathalos in the very first starter zone, which I've already done a couple of times, actually. And I was like, oh, did I kill that guy way early? Obviously, I wanted to kill Diablos. We'll come back to Diablos. I was like, oh, I've already done that. Huh. Maybe I should have done it earlier, but obviously feeling very confident, and I was like, well, maybe this is a different one. Maybe this is like a named one that's like for the story mode and stuff. But it turned out, no, this was something I had fought before. And off I went to do that. What preceded was the most insane hour of this game that I've had so far. Midway through the fight, with Rathalos taking to the skies and flying to different areas of the map, I was hunting him down, and while I was fighting him, Anjanath showed up. And I was like, oh, I do need to kill Anjanath. And the last time I had killed Anjanath, actually, in day 1, I think, Rathalos had appeared and just, like, one-shot Anjanath. It did, like, 700 or 800 damage or something like that to it. And I was like, oh, well, this is, like, kind of okay. I'm feeling pretty confident about both of these. I've beaten both of these things. So I could either cleave them down in my overconfidence, or I could just let them hurt each other, and I could just pick up an easy kill on one of them. No big deal. And so I kind of let this play out, and I was actually having so much fun that I was like, I wonder if I can do this. And I, like, leaped off a rock and landed on one of them's back, and I was, like, stabbing it in the back and doing all these kind of cool QTE things to, like, bring it down. I'm like, yeah, I'm, like, the man now, baby. And I was, like, leaping. I was grabbing onto, like, these bugs that are in some parts of the jungle map that you can swing from, and then you could drop down onto the enemies and do all this cool stuff. And it was, like, it was really sweet. And then Rathalos obviously took some damage and left. And Anjanath was still around. So I was like, okay, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'm going to kill Anjanath and then go and finish off Rathalos. This was the beginning of my downfall, ladies and gentlemen. The beginning of my downfall. I hunted Anjanath a long way. And then, for whatever reason, and I still have no concept of how this system works, is a message popped up saying Anjanath will leave the area soon. And I was freaking angry, because I'm like, you started this. I wasn't even fighting you. You got involved, and now, even though I've not been in the map that long, you're leaving? And I'm like, what is going on here? So I was like, well, that's not happening, right? You came into my fight, you started this, you're probably nearly dead, I am killing you. And so I chased him down again throughout this jungle. The jungle map, surprisingly, even though it's the first map of the game, is one of the most obnoxious to negotiate and to navigate through, because it's on so many different levels and there's lots of, like, pushing through reeds. I guess they wanted to show all these different elements of traversal, because they do pop up again later, but in much less annoying ways. And I was hunting it down, And I was, like, smashing it to pieces. Like, I was doing tons of damage. Like, really confident in fighting this thing. I was very comfortable with the game at this point. And he runs off again, and I get there, and I watched it happen. Like, I followed him down a pathway. And he just buried in the ground and said, Anjanath has left. And I cannot express to you how annoyed I was at this situation, because we'd only been fighting for a few minutes, as far as I can remember, but time travels very quickly during this game. The hunts are very long, and so it might have been longer, but I was like, what the hell, man? Like, I've put so much effort and hunted across the map to kill this thing. It joined in my fight just a few minutes ago and has now already left the area, and it's just an utter waste of time. And I'm like, God damn it, man. Why? Why do they leave at seemingly random times? But Rathalos is still around, that I started fighting before Anjanath, so Rathalos is still around. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go deal with this. And off I go to, like, all right, I'm going to kill Rathalos. Rathalos... And I'm going to come back to this. I'm going to explain it as jank, because I think what happens with Anjanath is jank. Like, it just shows up, and then it disappears really early for some reason. I've had this happen with Diablos in a different pull the day before, where it just was like, I started fighting it and it just disappeared. But the previous version of that fight, it stayed around forever. Like, I fainted like 8 times, and it's still stuck around. I don't know. So I was like, I don't know what this system is. And it could be described as jank. Bear that in mind. The next thing that happened when I went back to fight Rathalos could also be described, and is probably absolute jank, is Rathalos just didn't land. Rathalos just flew around the map in circles, completely unable to get to Rathalos. And all I could do was look at the map, and it does tell you where he's going to land, and run to there. And like 3 times, by the time I got there, he just landed and took off again and went somewhere else. To the point where I was like, I'm just going to wait at his nest, because eventually he'll come back. There was a cool moment earlier, though, where I accidentally somehow caused a landslide that, like, pushed it off a cliff down a waterfall. That was very cool. I have no idea what else lurks in the game that can allow those things to happen. That was awesome. But I can't attack it. And it's just doing laps around the map. And I'm like, what is going on? This is insane. I can't just... Literally, I'm just running around vines and jungle stuff. And I'm so frustrated and angry. And eventually I did, like... I got lucky that one of its paths to land next was pretty close to where I was. So I managed to re-engage combat and have a fight, which the boss then decided to just never land for minutes at a time. It just floated and just kept doing dive bombs left and right, left and right, left and right. And I'm like, I can't even hit this damn thing. It's not that I'm afraid to die, because like, my gear is decent enough that it doesn't really hurt me that much. But I just can't hit the damn thing. And I'm getting so angry and so frustrated. And in so many ways, this can be described as just awful gameplay. However, this is where Monster Hunter World wins. You don't. And it dawned on me at the end of the day, because when we get to our next story here, I finished the day exhausted, mentally exhausted. You don't blame the developer, you don't blame the game, you blame the creature. And that's how they have developed this jankiness that does happen. And it absolutely happens. You focus all that rage and frustration on the enemy that's doing it. It's not the devs, it's Rathalos. It's not the devs, it's Anjanath. It's not the devs, it's Diablos. And there is a satisfaction and joy that you take away having dealt with all this stuff when you slay the creature and you stand and you carve its corpse up. And that is a really powerful element of this game that is almost on par, and I know I bring up a lot, but Souls-like stuff where that frustration of getting clapped and clapped and clapped and learning and getting better and getting over things, and you put your final blade, that final hit, and we've all been there if you played a Souls game where you just sort of send the final hit, like even if you're going to get hurt, you think you can survive, and you just throw it in, and it dies, and you're like, yes. Ornstein and Smile, right? It's all this like, I got you, I got you, I got you. And you put all that rage and frustration onto the enemy as a personality of the enemy. Rathalos is not jankily designed because it can fly around the map and not land. It's a pain in the ass because that thing refuses to fight me. right? That's the mindset you walk away with this game, and it's so good. I love it so much. But ultimately, let's talk about my nemesis, Diablos. I started the day, as I finished this day, with, like, I'm going to kill Diablos. This was the first creature that had been kind of a wall. I had had 3 proper attempts at it and lost handily every time. Like, things needed to change. I needed to change up the game. I needed to engage more with the game's mechanics in order to overcome this. Because I had survived long enough to convince myself it was absolutely doable. I just needed to be better. It was a get good scenario and utilize different things. So I was plagued after I finished my last play session with what am I going to do tomorrow morning against Diablos. And I came in like full of beans, full of like ideas and strategies. And I was like, right, this is what we're going to do. We're going to build a bunch of traps. We're going to make sure we've got loads of like flash bugs to blind it. We've got all this stuff, right? And what we're going to do is we're going to play like the first half of the fight because it gets harder as it goes on. He becomes more vicious and more aggressive. We're going to play it out like normally with skill. And then when we get to the point where it like starts getting way more aggressive, we're just going to like trap him and bash him. And we're just going to like nuke the end. It was like execute rage. We're going to go into execute and we're just going to like bury him for the last like 30-40% of his HP. We're just going to chain stun him. We're going to blind him. We're just going to pummel him into the ground. That was my plan. So I spent the first 15 minutes of the morning getting tooled up. I went and made all my traps. I managed my inventory. I went and got the best food buff I could. It was like attack and defense up. I was like, this is rock solid. This is what we need. And then I went into the quest where I had faced Diablos, which was just kill a Rathalos. That was the quest where we'd faced Diablos 3 times already. And Diablos was not there. In fact, it's even worse than that. I found what was glimmering, because Diablos is like a sandy color, a sandy yellowy color, and the Rathalos is a kind of gray, but it was flying in the sunlight. So I was looking for Diablos and I couldn't find any tracks, and Diablos wasn't where I'd found him previously, but then overhead this dragon like swooped over me and I was like, got him, there he is. And I go and get in the fight. I should have recognized this earlier because I got poisoned and Diablos doesn't poison. And then, as I was nearly killing it, and he wasn't doing various mechanics, like burying into the ground and tunneling after you, I was like, this isn't Diablos, is it? Because I was doing really well. I was like, wait, this is just a Rathalos. Uh-oh. Oh, well, we'll kill this and then we'll go on. It turns out that the quest that I had that produced Diablos 3 times in a row was actually just a Rathalos quest. And it just so happened that Diablos was there, and that is what I had found first, but the level also has normal Rathalos in it, and now I had completed the quest. And the game was like, yeah, you did it, good job. And I'm like, no, I'm all buffed I'm buffed to the gills, man. I'm looking for Diablos. I finished this thing off like so quickly, and the game was like, yeah, you're all good. We're kicking you out in like 20 seconds. I'm like, no, don't do that. So I came out, and I was like, Christ, man, what am I going to do now? Because the quest had now disappeared from my quest list. I'm like, crap, what are we going to do? So I was like, I'm going to just go on an expedition there, because I've obviously unlocked Diablos. I'm going to go on an expedition to the Wastelands in order to fight Diablos. So I tooled up again. I redid all my traps. I did everything I needed. I even made a new loadout, which is called Wreck Diablos. And I go in, he's not there. And I'm wandering around for ages, and I'm having like little fights and things like that, and I can't find him. So I was like, it must be something wrong with the zone or whatever. So I like reset it again. And he's not there. And then it turns out it's like a random chance of fighting him. And I had no choice at that point because I was using a ton of consumables and food buffs and things. I was like, I can't fight him. And I'll be genuine with you guys. I was really upset. I was like, I can't. I'd already been doing this at this point for like 2.5 hours. And I just couldn't get him to appear. And I was so frustrated. I was like, I have to just move on. Otherwise, like this entire play session, we've achieved nothing. Nothing at all. I was like, I've got to push on. And so I went on my way. With some prodding from Chris was like, you need to continue the MSQ. And I'm like, all right, okay, we got to do the main story. So I did that, and comparatively, it was incredibly simple compared to what we had been doing. Like, I had to smash it. I did a few optional quests, which was just kill, like, some absolute baby monsters. I did make my armor so I could survive effluvia, which is in a rotten waste. I made that armor and went out and I fought an Odragon. I'm gonna get the name wrong, but I actually like bumped into this thing by accident while doing something else. Started fighting it, beat the crap out of it. Great fight, and then it went through a tunnel, and then ended up wandering around the map for like 45 minutes because I was MSQ blocked, and I didn't know that. And it goes to an area you simply cannot go to. It just does not allow you. The zone is not unlocked fully yet. And I was like, oh my god, come back to this. So that lessens in frustration a little bit there, but also like understandable because I had hard stopped the MSQ to complete all my optional things. And then, it was weird though. I had done so much that the story was like unlocking things I had done ages ago. And then it unlocked a boss called Legiana, I think it was. Legiana, some people ask me about this afterwards when we do our, like, non-spoiler chit-chat about how the day's gone. I hated this fight. I thought it was awful. It had a mechanic where it puts a frost debuff on you that drains all your stamina. I think the gimmick... There was a gimmick to this fight that didn't quite click with me, and I think the gimmick was you always want to be landing on its back in some way or form, because you get the glider, which I figured out how to do. You get the glider and you can land on things, but there were certain places you fight it where getting up higher than it was really awkward, like a very long climb up, and it can jump up and just knock you off. That I ended up just sort of like being annoyed at this. I think if you were a ranged combat player, this would have been infinitely better, and smarter me would have just gone, oh, I just need to change weapon and could have killed this, but I'm kind of committed to my melee combat. I'm really enjoying that. So I just struggled through it and got it killed, but whatever. I know I probably have to fight this thing again, I just don't want to. Kind of rubbish, but I ended up progressing the story to the point where I did fight Odragana, which is got a great set of armor with a set bonus I actually want, so I'm going to finish that off. And then the story said you need to kill Rathalos, the big one, that's the which is the story I told you at the beginning, and Diablos. I was like, thank God, I now have an official Diablos quest. I have it against my nemesis that had left me feeling bad all day. Like, I was talking about it all day. I was like, I think we should just go and try and do Diablos again. Because I can't communicate with my chat. I don't know what they're saying. I was like, I think we should go and do it again. It's bugging me. I've been thinking about it all night. I need to go and do it. And I was progressing forward. I'd made, like, a new weapon upgrade and things like that. And then it gave me a quest to kill Diablos. And I was like, oh, thank God. Now we can do it. Ladies and gentlemen, I think this is the most triumphant moment of Monster Hunter World so far for me. Is... I was like, I'm just going to go ham as quickly as possible so it has no risk of disappearing. I'm going to pop everything and then hopefully be able to eke out a kill before he vanishes, right? Because he's got so much HP that he can just disappear on me even if I've been fighting him for 30 minutes and damaging him in that process. And oh my God, I went in. Now, I will say this. It wasn't the same as the fight I'd progged, because in the story quest version, he actually didn't leave to the main area that he spawns in, because it's like a story mode where you fall down like a sand pit into his arena. In the original fights that I'd done with him, he moves all over the zone, and some of the zones are really awkward to fight him in. But that time will come again, I'm sure. But this one stayed relatively close to each other, so you could keep the pressure on. I battered him, and it felt so good. It felt so good. I shock trapped him like 3 times. I pitfall trapped him, and every time he was coming at me, I used explosive barrels on him. I did everything I could do, and I just pummeled and pummeled and pummeled, and was just like stabbing my weapon deep into his skull every step of the way. And I was like, die, die! Like a vicious, visceral reaction occurred in my soul to bring this monster down. And when it finally was slayed, I was just overjoyed with what I had just accomplished, and my nemesis was down, and I had happiness filled up. And this is the emotion I want from a video game, right? I want this mix of sadness, frustration, anger, happiness, joy, all this stuff that happened over a single play session that made it so good for me. And that brings us to where we are today, which is potentially the final story quest. At least it feels like that, but it also feels a bit early. So I am expecting something to go wrong, and then we have to proceed and do something else, which I'll be more than happy with. I do not want this experience to be over just yet. If it is the ending, though, I'll see what the chat says, whether the DLC is worth or not. And if it is worth, well, I mean, I'm in all the way. So stay tuned tomorrow to find out what the hell is going on. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.